Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review the Black Phone. So, this, of course, is a kind of everyday man who is to just kind of abduct kids kind of film. So, the only thing unique about it is we have Finney and we have Gwen, who have this kind of psychic ability that Finney is to be able to somehow channel all the other kids that eventually had gotten abducted at one point, and Gwen also is to have these dreams that are somehow connected to this grabber case somehow. So that's the only real interesting thing in this movie, because everything else is just really fairly boring and is to just be like a kid in a basement who's trying to strategize against this adult man, and this adult man is to kind of be playing this game that Finney doesn't really even know the rules to. So just kind of like having the grabber who's supposed to think that this kid is going to go on and do something, and then he doesn't, and just kind of wait this kid out. So we have going in this story that we have these moments kind of leading up to Finney's abduction, and there's a number of other kids that eventually Finney had known, and then they get abducted, and then he does. So we further go into this story and have Finney, who is to then get abducted, and then like the focusing on him just kind of being in this place, kind of consistently getting these phone calls from this phone, who come to find out is probably either Finney going crazy or possibly Finney channeling this kind of supernatural psychic ability for him to go on and be able to come up with all these strategies on his own, or having all these past people go and give him hints or help him, or like go on and help Finney rescue himself. So, with that said, this movie is interesting. Like, I would have to go on and like barely give it a kind of thumbs up. It's very boring. Like for me, like if there wasn't that whole psychic kind of supernatural element to this movie, I would go on and just say that this is a bad film. That's the only thing kind of carrying this movie is just the whole like Gwen's having dreams, Finney's having these phone calls, and that's the only thing really helping the story, because it's very boring. Um, because the grabber Ethan Hawke's character is just a common guy, and so like it's not like he's it's not like he's it's not like he's some kind of uh, character that is to be overly menacing, even so much so that I would probably find a number of other characters that are much more menacing than actually the grabber is. Like Finney and Gwen's biological father, who is to be this kind of drunk a-hole character that is to take a belt to his kids. So, with that said, we have this movie being a theater film. So, if people want to go out of the way to just kind of blow money on this movie, I would not eventually say, like, no. But go on with very low expectations, and then you might eventually be happy about this film because you went in with very low expectations. Uh, and plus, when we go into spoilers, you can go on and hear what I really have to say about this film and just talk about what happens in this movie, and you may be more intrigued by this film by that. So, with that said, let's go into saying also you can watch a bootleg version of this movie. It's still a film, it's just a bootleg version. So first off, you can go into a Google search and search the word Letter C Movies app, and you can go on and hopefully find this app and be able to see a bunch of premium access stuff, a lot of exclusive apps you would be able to have to go on a certain app to pay a monthly fee to be able to see. The next app would be Fox HD Movies. Whatever I say next, it might help or hinder you eventually going on and finding this app, because the logo will say Fox HD Movies, but the title will say something different. They'll say Play 1080p HD Movies. The next thing is to have a app through Google search called TV Crush. TV Crush had changed the title and its logo and its whatever. But if you search the word TV Crush, 2 words, you'll go on to find a app that says HD Movies 123 Movies, and hopefully you'll be able to go on and find that app, download it, and be able to watch a bunch of bootleg stuff. Isn't that great? So with that said, so for the grading of this, I would just call this movie interesting. Boring, but interesting. So that could be a lot of people just going on like, yeah, no. Or eventually waiting till this becomes cheaply put together on a premium access. Do whatever you like. Watch the bootleg version. Whatever you want to do. So with that said, I think let's just go into spoilers. Let's just crank this out. Interesting enough, normally I would do like a tee-up version of this movie, but kind of from really what all I said, like there isn't much to this movie beyond what all I just said. Besides just, hey, like let's really just go into spoilers, because there's not much about this movie. It's only an hour and a half also, so really you're just kind of clinging on to what I just said for a non-spoiler version. Really, that's it. So let's go into that Double 510 territory, and let's go into spoilers. Let's go into that time. It's about that time yet again. To go into spoiler time, it's about the time yet again to spoil this movie. So, in the beginning of this film, we have Finney that is to be playing baseball against a team that has a kid named Bruce in it. So, Bruce, of course, to be this batter going against Finney, who is this pitcher. And so Finney is to go on and put 2 strikes into Bruce. And so by the third pitch, we have Bruce who smacks this ball, and he is to, of course, hit a home run. So Bruce ends up winning the game for his team, and so Bruce, after they kind of shake hands or kind of high-five everybody, we have Bruce that goes back to Finney and tells him that his arm is mint, and so on and so forth, just kind of like, hey, like, good game kind of thing. So we have Finney and we have Gwen, who are to leave from going off to school, and we of course have Gwen, who is mentioning to Finney about the grabber, and Finney doesn't want to go on and hear anything about the grabber, and Gwen is like, well, why not? Like it's what's really going on. So Finn is like, yeah, but I just don't want to hear about it. Kind of like the true horror story of what's kind of going on in their neighborhood. So, or he's kind of worried that it'll be like Voldemort, if you say his name, then all of a sudden you'll get grabbed next. So Finney is to go on and come to find out, another kid ends up being taken by the grabber, and it's none other than the Bruce kid that Finney had gone on and like played against him in baseball. So they're seeing his missing picture, and they're realizing that this kid is to have been grabbed. So Finney and Gwen are to at some point be going to school, and we have, of course, where there's this kid named Robin and a guy named Moose. So Moose is a very much larger kid than Robin, but it seems that Robin is to have some kind of fighting skill of sorts where like he's at this moment where he's almost doing like this like wrestling move where it's like a neck breaker, but then he goes on and doesn't go full on into the neck breaker. He just kind of drops this kid. And I'm like, okay, like so he went from a wrestling move to just dropping this kid on the ground. Because if you've ever seen like the wrestling move called the neck breaker, like it's kind of like set up like that and kind of you go down. Um, but I guess like so Robin is going on and this kid's on the ground, so he's just pounding the crap out of him, just punching the life out of this kid, to where this guy's face is getting busted open, and Finney is watching all this carnage. And so later on, Finney is to go to the bathroom, and we have a number of bullies that don't like Finney. So they're saying like, "Hey man, like, what are you doing in this bathroom? This bathroom's for boys. Like, you're not a boy." So all of a sudden, Robin appears in this bathroom to eventually tell these bullies like, "Hey, like, go away. Like, you're messing with my friend." So we have Robin who is to bandage his wound from his knuckles being, of course, bloodied up. So Finney and Robin are talking about movies, and so Finney is to mention how like he can't go on and probably watch the same movies that Robin gets to because his father, Finney's father, won't let him watch rated R movies. So Robin's saying like, well, hey, yeah, I go to the theater and I watch whatever because my dad says it's okay. So Finney then goes on and is to try late at night to watch a rated R film. That is to be some horror movie. That is to be some blood that kind of comes out of this tub and this red hand that comes out, and this woman is kind of looking on like, oh, what is this? So, but we'll get to that. So Robin is to ask Finney for help on some schoolwork because he's kind of behind. If he gets another F on in some class, his parents will kind of hurt him. So Finney's like, yeah, I'll help you out. So come to find out, Gwen is to go on and have specific details that are tied to the grabber case. Gwen is to go on to school and is to tell one of these counselors or one of these principals or one of these some people about the black balloons. And so both of these detectives, both Detective Wright and Detective Miller, end up personally coming to this school and are saying like, well, yeah, like the black balloons was something that like only we knew about. How is it that this girl knows about it? And so the detectives are thinking that like Gwen may be the grabber, and Gwen's like, God, like you detectives are like stupid and this and that, like insulting them. It's kind of funny how she goes on and insults them. I think that's the funniest parts of these movies, or this movie. It's just Gwen going on and eventually kind of getting frustrated with certain characters, like Jesus, or eventually these detectives. So Gwen is to go home with Finney after school, and so Gwen is to mention that she's going to go to some friends to sleep over, and Finney's like, okay, and so Gwen's like, yeah, don't eat all the ice cream. So Finney goes home and is to watch that horror movie while I'm sure his father is passed out drunk because that's the great dad that he is, when he only really has one dad and no mother, because I guess eventually there is a whole story that happens with their mother, and eventually I'll get to that. So the next day, after Finney is to watch his horror film, Gwen is to come home and Terrence is to get a phone call about the whole detectives thing. So Terrence is to go on and take a belt to his child and to continue to like belt her consistently. So Terrence is telling Gwen to not ice her butt so that way she can learn. So Terrence is telling Gwen to not tell anybody about Gwen's dreams, to just write them off as dreams and nothing else. Because at one point Terrence was to go on and his wife was to have these visions also, and eventually that led to her death. And so Terrence doesn't want Gwen to have the same fate. And so we go on and we have Finney and we have Gwen who are sitting next together watching TV, as Gwen of course has heard from all the the belt the belting, whatever the adjective word would be for that. So now they come to find out that Robin is to have been abducted by the grabber. We have Terrence who gets the phone call and is asking Finney if he knows a kid named Robin. Finney's like, yeah, that's my best friend. And Terrence is like, well, like I guess that's the next kid who ended up getting grabbed. So people are looking for Robin. Eventually, I guess there's a search party to go and look for this person. So trying to have people get involved. So we have Finney that's asking Gwen to use her like dream ability to hopefully find where Robin is located. And Gwen is telling Finney that it doesn't work that way, that it's just kind of like it's out of her control. So Finney's like, but yeah, but like just try. So Gwen goes on and is to eventually pray to Jesus, hoping that she'll get these dreams. And eventually, when Gwen is to try to pray to Jesus, Terrence, Gwen's father, is to come in and be like, hey, what's going on in here? Gwen's like, oh, nothing. It's like, yeah, it better be. So Gwen is trying to pray to Jesus to hope she gets these dreams. And eventually, like, dreams happen, but, like, way later on, way far too late. Or she doesn't really understand the dreams, and so like she doesn't know how really helpful she can be, to the point where Gwen is to get upset with Jesus and is to like really want Jesus to really give her this perfect dream, which like won't seem to really easily happen. So after Robin is to, of course, get abducted, it seems that Finney is to be on his own as far as the bully thing is concerned. So now Finney and Gwen, Gwen again is to eventually go on and kind of do a sleepover again at some other person's place. But Finney is to be on his own, kind of walking home. So all of a sudden one day we go on and have this guy in this black van who is to say that he's a magician and he's very clumsy and he drops these items. Come to find out this is Ethan Hawke, telling us that Finney is going to get abducted soon. So we have the grabber who is to drop these items and is to tell like Finney like, hey, look, I'm a magician, like you want to see a magic trick? And Finney's like, sure. So the grabber goes on and is to spray into this kid's mouth to have him pass out. And then the grabber goes and takes his kid and shoves him into the van and shoves all his items that he, of course, is to drop into this van and then drives off. So Finney is to now be in this basement where it seems that he won't get meals every day, but it seems that the grabber is to give Finney meals every once in a while. So Finney, when in this basement, is to notice that there's a phone that appears there. And so the grabber is to tell Finney that the phone never works. But we have Finney who is to keep hearing the phone ring anyways. and eventually it points Finney is to pick up the phone, and come to find out it's the spirits of all the kids that eventually were taken and are now giving him pointers to hopefully try and escape. So, hoping that maybe this will work for him when it didn't work for them. So, the grabber is to come down and at some points like have this mask on, variations of the mask, and is to really just kind of be like eyes open and just like, hey, yeah. But really, Finney is to ask the grabber questions, and we have it to where the grabber is supposed to be playing this game with Finney, but like it doesn't really seem that Finney knows much of the rules. So like we have these phone calls who are going on and trying to help Finney figure out what he's supposed to do because the grabber says nothing. So at first we have Finney go on and try to get to this little metal window, and Finney looks at it and he's like, well, like, shouldn't have anybody have escaped from this before? Shouldn't have Robin obviously like tried to pull this thing off and escape before? So Finney ends up getting phone calls mentioning that there is uh, a tile that is in this room that he can kind of dig out this hole, and that should be like the first thing that he goes on and does. So Finney digs out this hole and is to put all of the extra dirt in this tub, and he flushes, or this toilet, and he flushes because there's a toilet down there. So Finney goes on and eventually is like, okay, like, what is this hole for? So let me pause here for a second. All right. So we go into this film, and so Finney is to find certain like wire, and he is to also go on and find these kind of carpets that are kind of rolled up. So Finney goes on and takes this wire and is to figure out how to try to like wrangle this this kind of metal this metal window. And so Finney uses and ropes with the kind of help of this rug to break out this metal thing. And so we later find out that the metal thing is to just kind of be put into that hole, and like really the grabber never realizes it or questions that it's no longer there. So Finney is to continue to get other people talking to him. He eventually ends up getting Bruce talking to him, and Bruce, of course, the baseball kid from before, and it gets to the point to where most of the kids, I guess, had been there for so long they don't even remember what their name was, and so Finney has to remind them what their names were. So Bruce is like, "Oh yeah, like that is my name, Bruce. That sounds right." So we have it at some point where we have another kid who had been taken, and his name was Billy. And Billy, I guess, was some kid that used to do newspapers, and he used to be taken. So eventually, we continue to have Finney, that is to find out once the grabber is to give this guy breakfast, that the grabber likes to open this door hoping that the kid is going to walk up these stairs, and then the grabber is going to take a belt to this kid and kind of get him unconscious. So I believe it's Billy who calls Finney and tells him like what the whole game strategy is, and Finney like doesn't really seem like he wants to fall for it. because he knows he's going to get beaten. So Finney goes on, and like we have this uh, thing going on for the second time, to the point to where the grabber ends up falling asleep waiting for this kid to come. So Finney then goes on and is to get this phone call about uh, this locker that Finney can unlock while he's upstairs and while the grabber is asleep. And so Finney goes on into this room where he can use this combination to unlock this locker and then hopefully run outside. And by the time that Finney is to jump out of this area to get outside, we have the grabber that is after him. So Finney is kind of running up and down this neighborhood screaming and yelling for help. And we have it to where certain houses are to turn their lights on. The grabber ends up going and taking Finney, and before anybody else is to notice, the grabber is to go on and knock Finney out and drag him back to the basement without anybody really realizing what was going on. So we have Gwen, who is to consistently get these dreams, but they don't really mean anything. To where at one point, Finney may go on and may have seen these dreams also, or maybe he doesn't see any of this, and we as the viewer are just seeing this. Because Gwen at one time is to go and see one of the kids who had gotten previously grabbed, which is a guy named Vance, I believe, who is a much older kid who is to get himself into some trouble and get arrested. And so Gwen is to go and be kind of watching along as this kid is to do these kind of acts and get arrested. And Gwen doesn't really understand what these dreams mean, but Finney is to be talking to Vance, and Vance had gone on and digged a hole in one of these walls and was to by the other side of the wall was to see this freezer. So Finney is to go on and try to detach this refrigerator and try to get into the fridge to try to escape. And it seems that this fridge has a certain kind of doors that Finney cannot open up from the inside of this freezer. So Finney again is to, at this point, because he's tried everything, Finney is to start to just cry, because he of course to realize that he's going to die soon. And everything that these people are to give him some strategy to supposedly help him isn't helping. So now Finney is to have Robin call him, his friend of his. So Robin is to go on and tell Finney that he needs to go on and consistently do over and over with this phone a kind of fighting stance. And that when eventually Finney is to have to see the grabber again to kind of pull this phone and the cord of the phone off and put dirt into the phone. And Finney's like, well, will I be able to like hear you guys again? And Robin's like, yeah, like you'll be able to hear us, but like that's not much of your concern. Just pack this phone with dirt and then be able to use it against this guy, because it's either like he kills you or you kill him. Because Finney was to go on, and when he was to be abducted, he ends up cutting with this thing that Finney had this guy's arm, and the grabber, Ethan Hawke's character, is to mention how like, man, you really did a number of my arm, and he is to have this kind of bandage over his arm. So the interesting thing of it is that Finney never goes and thinks that he can use this phone to call for help. And also, the grabberist always mentioned, like, hey, why do you keep going after that phone? The phone doesn't work. Then why is it there? Why is the phone there? So, the. So we have a moment where these detectives are to go to this man's house, and this man is to be Max. And so these two detectives are going to this guy's home, Max, and Max is to have been watching the news and is trying to figure out uh, where all the abductions have happened. And so Max is possibly thinking like, well, like it really could be like by this house exactly, or it could be here, or it could be that. So while also Max is going on and doing coke, we have these detectives that are going on and saying like, well, hey man, like we just kind of came in here, but like, hey, next time you should probably clean up a little bit. And Max is like, oh crap, like these guys could have popped me from this coke that's in this house. So the detectives let it slide. They just walk off. So eventually we have Max that is to start to realize that maybe there is a possibility that a house of his could actually be an abductor and he doesn't realize it. So Max goes on to his other house to possibly think that there may be somebody being abducted here. And so Max goes on to this basement and is to find the kid there. And Max is like, oh my god, like I'm finding you, I'm helping you. And so Max is like, yeah, like, so Max is so relieved thinking that he's kind of solved this case. And the next thing that he ends up solving is an axe in the head, because we now have the grabber that is to axe his own brother in the face, killing him off. So we have Gwen, who is to have this dream about a certain address. And so Gwen is to tell the authorities that, hey, like, I know this address and you guys need to go there because there's something about this home. So these detectives take Gwen's word for it, and so they bombard their way through this home to eventually find in the basement that there are dead bodies within this house. So now that the grabber is in the basement with Finney, Finney is to use the phone to his advantage and is to go on and trick the grabber. So Finney is to go on and have the grabber fall through this hole, and then Finney is to go on and use his phone and consistently hit the grabber consistently. And then when the grabber is kind of all out of sorts, we have Finney who uses this phone to choke the grabber, and we have Finney who is to give the grabber the phone as it's ringing. And so every person who is to ever go on and be abducted by the grabber, they're all talking to the grabber, and they're all just kind of like, yeah, like anything that they were to say in their past is to all be towards the grabber. And how like the one Bruce kid is to say like, yeah, like Fanny's arm is mint and this and that. Like they just kind of repeat the same old stuff again. So we have Finney who ends up choking out the grabber and I'm assuming killing him off. So since Finney can now go on and make it out of this house without anybody stopping him, Finney makes it out of the house across the street, and so Gwen is to run off to Finney and hug him. And so the detectives are like, oh my god, like this kid is here. Like this kid was here the whole entire time. So they figured out the case, they solved it, and so we have Terrence, who ends up seeing both Gwen and Finney, and Terrence is like, "Oh my god," like he's all apologetic and all this and that. So really, kind of like the happy ending, kind of wrapping up of this. So with that said, that technically wraps up this movie. There might have been not everything done perfectly, but is what it is. Let me know in the comments below if there's something that I forgot about. There might be kind of specifics about certain characters or certain little things. But good enough. Good enough for me. At the end of the day, I will just say I'm just going to get out of here so I can go on and wrap this one up to finally say that this one is done. Because I went on and I watched this movie, and then I kind of waited a while. I had to do some kind of project of sorts, and then went on to review this. So it is what it is. So with that said, bye everybody. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about the black phone, considering how short this video was compared to a lot of others. With that said, goodbye everybody. Bye everybody.